So let's begin in the classroom. Right, let's begin in the classroom. The first thing that you will see of a student, right, before we start looking at their cognitive abilities, is that we're going to look at a child's appearance. As individuals, we all look at each other. The first thing we do is we have an appearance. And sometimes as individuals, you sometimes size up someone by the appearance, or you might have some perceptions about someone because of the appearance. So now let's look into my life. So I had my mom, as you know, and dad who came in the 60s, and I was born in the 70s. So now I'm going to school in the 70s and early 80s, where I have my mom, who is from India, wearing a sari, right? And she's also wearing a scarf to follow her religious commandment. And then she maybe sometimes either wears a cloak over her sari, and we're walking to school. We're walking to school, and sometimes when I'm in kindergarten, no problem. Most kindergartners all get along, right? So I had no issue. But walking to school, sometimes you have these middle school students who maybe haven't seen too many individuals from India, especially in the 70s, and now looking at her, looking at me, and thinking, what is this? What is she wearing? So now, most kids are not going to make a comment in front of the teacher or in front of my mom. They're going to make comments after the fact when someone's gone, right? And I went to a school where I lived 1 block away from the school. So a lot of times afterwards, kids would be playing outside, biking. I know that which doesn't happen that much now, but back then everyone was outside. And my father, who when he went to work, he did wear a suit jacket. But when he came back home, he went back to his traditional clothing. Sometimes that clothing could have been a long garment, which you will see that sometimes in the Middle East that you see people wearing. And I've realized sometimes where kids will be walking by, my dad's watering the grass, and they're looking at him, looking at me, looking at him, looking at me, they walk away. And the next day at school, guess what? Habeeb's dad wears a dress. I mean, it was like a white long dress. I don't know what he was doing, but he's wearing a dress. Look, my dad's not wearing a dress like he was wearing. No, it's called a thobe. Like a kid in the 70s knows what a thobe is, right? So that by itself was a crazy challenge, right? The idea of like, what should I do? Or like, your mom, what is this wrap thing? She's just rolling around her, around her clothing. Why is she covering her head? Does she have hair? Does she not have hair? She got some hair problems, right? Why is she doing that? Because it's something out of the norm, right? So you have these individuals where clothing plays a big part. Or even if we're struggling and you have some immigrants or you have some minorities where they're just learning. Sometimes my sister had to wear her Indian clothing to school the first 2-3 year, right? Until they got comfortable with all the American clothing. Or some of my cousins who just came from overseas and they're like, and they're getting made fun of because like, what are you wearing? What kind of clothing is this? So these were all challenges that sometimes maybe in front of the teachers were not being said. But outside in the playground or walking back home, these comments were made. And it's so important that sometimes that when we go through these challenges, that kids are going to be questioned for their clothing. I'll give you my third example. So something might be like, well, you know what, clothing, that's kind of cultural coding, yeah, it's gonna be different. The other aspect was, even when I got older, I played sports. And being a person who's practicing their faith, one of our requirements of a guy is to make sure that when you wear shorts, you got to wear them up to your knees. And I remember back when I grew up, the shorts were quite short. And I remember, Coach, I need to, wear these long shorts. And I'm like, okay, but you could not find them anywhere. Now you can. Thank God for Jordan. But let me tell you that story, right? So I was the first individual who took sweatpants, cut them, my mom folded them, and made these shorts up to my knees. Then one day Michael Jordan was walking by, saw me play, said, man, those are some nice things. Shorts, I like them. I was like, no problem, Jordan, this is how I roll. Jordan liked them so much, he made that into his signature long shorts. He made $1 billion, and now I'm an educator. Too bad for Jordan, right? Now, that story sounds great if that's how it happened. No, he kind of on his own had the long shorts, and I also got to give the University of Michigan Fab Five for keeping the shorts popular, long shorts. But at that time, it was a challenge, right? And for me to walk around and like, well, why is he wearing not the school uniform, wearing sweatpants with longer shorts, was also somewhat embarrassing, and also people were asking. So sometimes you'll have some kids who might be, because if it's a cultural aspect or a religious aspect, have to wear specific clothing at specific times. You might have an individual who from like India, there's called Sikh, where they cover their head, a turban, and maybe would be made fun of. Or you have a young lady who has to wear a scarf to practice her faith as a Muslim young lady, and then might be made fun of. Or you might have different individuals who I had friends who are Orthodox Jewish students who had to wear a yarmulke and might be made fun of. So you'll see that in various groups of individuals that there might be something that they might be wearing and they might be proud of, but because it's not the norm, you might have some kids stereotyping them, picking on them, making comments, or bullying them. So it's something I want you guys to kind of keep in mind regarding clothing.